Hey everyone, how are you doing? I felt like doing a space. I haven't really been talking politics much recently, so I just wanted to jump in, get a little feedback. Two things that I tweeted out today are of interest to me. First off, that notion of a definition of woke, I think, is something that's very important, particularly after Elon Musk tweeted out, "We must end the woke mind virus. Our very civilization depends upon it." I'm curious what they actually mean by woke. And there does seem to be a textbook or dictionary definition of this, of an awareness of past grievances, and systemic and ongoing, perhaps, systemic injustice towards minorities and a desire to counteract that. But I think there's something deeper to it than that. There's something bigger and deeper to it when people use this word. I mean, this word has become hackneyed, in my opinion, on the right. It's been used for everything under the sun. Um, and I think that to some degree is a product of polarization where everything gets polarized. Certainly during COVID-19, public health got polarized. It became a left right issue to a very large extent. And so you just kind of paint this brush of the other side. And in a polarized environment, it is kind of a weird thing. And it is weird even for people like me who are a little bit older, where we can remember a much less polarized environment. At this point, every movie gets polarized, public health gets polarized, tax hikes become woke or something like this. It's very intense. And anyway, I am just interested in this. I think it comes from actually a rap song from like 2010 or something like this, but that seems to be immaterial. It seems to have just entered the parlance, like a lot of things, like based, like all sorts of stuff. It entered through African American culture and then got picked up, maybe quasi ironically. I don't think it was quasi ironic in the case of woke. And I can certainly remember, in the 2014, 2015 era, even Saturday Night Live was making fun of it. I remember there was a advertisement sketch with Ryan Gosling where he was wearing unisex, oversized, extremely unattractive jeans, and he turned to the camera and said, "Woke." So even then, it was being made fun of. It certainly had some cachet as well during the Ferguson episode a few years ago. I don't think it really returned in 2020 with the BLM protest and then riots. It might have been just overdone at that point. But I think for conservatives, it's becoming intense because it's, you know, Marxism, communism. They will say that. And you hear Fox News people say that. You hear Marjorie Taylor Greene say that. These are commies. Biden and his communist agenda. But even they know that the glove doesn't quite fit. To call the Democrats Soviets is a bit much, even for these doofuses. And so I think woke kind of has taken on something like the Red Menace. It's just extremely intense, and I believe that conservatives think that woke people are destroying civilization. So anyway, as you can tell, I kind of half-baked thoughts in the matter. I was thinking about writing on it and trying to coordinate my thoughts in the matter. The other thing that I find interesting is I was just glancing around today to see what was going on, and there was a article about JD Vance seeking to ban porn. Now, this might very well be a non-starter at the moment, but he actually will get more support than he certainly would have gotten 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It is a thing again. It's something mentioned on the right. Um, I remember I was thinking to myself when I saw this, and they were talking about how the Supreme Court, and especially a conservative Supreme Court, would be sure to strike down any ban on pornography. And my mind went back to a short blog that I wrote for alternativeright.com back in 2010 about Elena Kagan. And I remember hearing about then. Elena Kagan was known as very politic. She, whether you take that as a compliment or a criticism is up to you. She was an alliance builder. She didn't let on exactly what her feelings were, and she actually didn't write many articles or books. I think there's only about a handful of published material. Now, on the Supreme Court, she's actually known as one of the better writers. So there you go. But in the 90s at the University of Chicago, my old stomp grounds, of course, this was about 10 years before I was there. I was in middle school in 1993, but she she attended and spoke at a conference. This is actually one of her very few published articles on banning obscenity. And she was saying things like there was low value speech and high value speech, and we make distinctions. And anyway, she also of note, she connected it to hate speech. Now, in the article that I read, what exactly she meant by hate speech was not detailed. And I might even go and dig up that law journal article that she wrote. It might be very interesting. But you can make lots of different arguments for banning porn. You can make the argument that it is abusive to women, or that it inspires rape. Many feminists made that argument. Rick Santorum actually made that argument. I can remember a while ago. I think he made that argument actually about rap music, and he was kind of saying all of this obscenity about rap music. I'm gonna go smoke your ass and go home with my hose or whatever. All this stuff was inspiring rape, which I never found particularly compelling. The idea that any of these things didn't exist before rap music. But I do believe that speech has power, and at the very least, speech can make people worse. So, Rick Santorum, despite his many faults, might have been getting at something, even if in a ham fisted way. And I think it is something that we should talk about, this marketplace of ideas notion that ultimately derives from Wendell Holmes. It derives from a dissent he made in a Supreme Court decision that ultimately upheld the prosecution of some, what is it, Russian anarchists, something like that, who were arrested due to the Sedition Act during the First World War. He actually dissented from that, and that is where a lot of those marketplace of ideas concepts were generated. And he seems to have this notion that, who's to say that those anarchists aren't right? Other countries have a very different notion of free speech, but we are a kind of experiment, an unfinished project. And so we should go to the lab and test it out. Maybe we'll put hydrogen and oxygen together and make water. I hope we don't split the atom and blow up the laboratory. You can see where I'm going with this. it's a libertarian notion. It ignores power, first off. Some people have louder voices than others. That's almost a kind of Marxian critique. It ignores a notion of the common good. The fact is, anyone who has been raised by decent parents or is trying their best to raise children, you understand that you don't want to show them things that are obviously heinous. You also want to instill values. And what is the best way to instill values? What is the way that we've been instilling values since the Stone Age? It's story. And that is fundamentally what art is. Music, obviously, can reveal quite a bit about who you are and what kind of culture you are. And I think it can deeply influence what kind of culture you are. Art is not merely mimesis, it doesn't just hold up a mirror to culture, it creates culture. And for Oliver Wendell Holmes to think that we don't have a compelling interest to create better people, he is simply mistaken. Also, we have a kind of paternalistic and interest in doing this. Most people don't want to be good on their own, and they must be, as it were, forced to be free. That is, sometimes you must compel them to be the best version of their self. And the notion of just kind of letting things be and we'll see what happens, as Oliver Wendell Holmes seems to argue in that famous brief. I mean, it's all an experiment, isn't it? This just strikes me as exceedingly dangerous and hogwash. It's dangerous in the sense of allowing traitors and enemies of the state to publish and act, without inhibition. But it's maybe even more dangerous to allow our society to degenerate down to bestial levels by just saying things like, well, golly, this is America. I mean, we can't tell people what to think, and how to act, and what music to listen to. But the fact is, every other culture, when faced with this problem, said yes to that. And so should we. So, anyway, libertarian arguments, as you can tell at this point, have very little purchase on my soul. Okay. Anyone want to speak? Anyone want to disagree with what I just said? Does anyone want to make the point that Richard Spencer is making arguments that will be used to ban him? Maybe there's a little kernel of truth there. Anyway, anyone want to jump in? All right, guys. No one jumps in, then I'm going to go away. There we go. All right. What's up, media saboteur? How are you doing there, media saboteur? What's on your mind?
Doing well, sir. I don't have much to say. Just this one point. The banning porn thing, this whole porn circle jerk anti-porn thing that's been going around online for the last 5, 6, 7 years. Of this whole campaign, this anti-porn thing, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. All it really boils down to for me is why not the message be don't jerk off? That seems to be the message to me. Don't jerk off, which is a weird message, but that's
it's a weird
that's
message.
What it is. And that's it. That's all I had to say.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I guess we just understand human nature. I mean, I've said this many times. There is just a fundamental difference between eras of pornography, let's say. So there is a fundamental difference with the development of color photography and then video. So there is no doubt pornography in the ancient world. If you ever go visit Pompeii, you'll see lots of it. But even that was toxic. However, even that kind of, there's some sort of representation involved. So it's a little statue of a, pan-like creature with a giant phallus, or a vase where you see various acts going on. But it's a representation, and thus you're distanced from it in some way. And there is, even in the stupidest bit of ancient pornography, there's some art involved. The written word can be less immediate, maybe more powerful, you could say, in terms of pornography. But all of this changed with color photography and video in when I was a lot younger, and you could get porn movies on VHS. I can actually remember when I was, this is, I don't know when this was, maybe early 90s or around there, where my friends and I, we would have to go steal a porn to look at it. So you'd have to go, like, find your way to some 7-Eleven convenience store somewhere and, like, go in the back, and while your buddy's buying a Twinkie, you kind of, like, slink out without someone noticing you. I never was caught, but porn was so difficult to get, and you could thus only access it, you know, late at night, or maybe catch a glimpse of it during the day, but you were distanced from it. But obviously, the internet changes just fundamentally what porn is. Porn isn't something that you just catch a glimpse of once in a while. It's this overwhelming presence. It is so easy to access. And beyond that, you're not exactly accessing a nudie mag, although there is a ton of vanilla porn, quote unquote, out there, which is probably less, heinous in my opinion. I mean, you can access some of the most ghastly shit I could ever imagine. I mean, you're in a nightmare, basically. It's even gone beyond erotic at that point. And the idea that we're going to just treat all of this as just like free speech just strikes me as fundamentally absurd. Um, you have to make distinctions at some point. You have to make calls. All right, Yugi Muto, you were next.
Okay, so I actually missed the first part of the space. So I just wanted to get what, did you have a position on pornography that it's like I couldn't quite get it, but I have my own opinion on it, which I kind of wanted to share.
Yes, I am. I'll give you my policy proposal. I am highly sympathetic towards banning pornography, and I, at the very least, we should talk about it. Now, of course, there are like pragmatic concerns when you say something like that. Is it even possible in this day and age? Well, I bet you actually could really ban 80% of it, or you could make it very difficult to get. I mean, for instance, if I wanted to shoot up heroin, I don't even know where to start. I mean, how do you get heroin? I don't know. I live in a bubble. But my point by mentioning that is just that, like, this notion that it's like, well, it's out there anyway, and like, this won't stop anyone, or that's nonsense. I don't. If I wanted to get a rocket launcher gun, I don't know where I would start with such a thing. Banning things does actually work, and the libertarians are wrong about that as well. So I'm highly sympathetic towards it. However, I would offer a kind of an apology, or a kind of gift in return for banning pornography. And that would be the legalization and regulation of strip clubs and prostitution. Now, why would I do such a thing? Because I recognize that man has, and when I say man, I mean mankind. Probably mostly males in this case, but not entirely. Actually, a ton of women are watching hardcore pornography at this point in world history. Women would visit prostitutes too, but you get my point. I recognize man's fallen nature, as it were. I recognize that people are flawed. They want to get their rocks off. They so on and so on. The thing about prostitution or something like a strip club, which obviously strip clubs are legal and regulated at this point, is that it's difficult. So you actually have to go somewhere to find a prostitute. This is not something that's just enveloping your life and making you more lonely. Thirdly, or secondly, it's a real experience. So I'm kind of making an attack against online culture and virtual reality of pornography. And I think we should attack it and give people a feeling of the real. So, whatever you want to say about the squalid nature of some lonely guy visiting a prostitute, at the very least, it is a real experience. It is doing something
I
that is
disagree.
natural with another person. Secondly, if you legalize and regulate prostitution, I think that would wildly cut down on human trafficking. It would be, it would be a job. You would pay taxes. I don't know I don't care about these pragmatic concerns, but there would be testing regimens done by the state. So I guess my reasonable policy proposal is that with one hand you giveth, with the other you taketh away, and thus porn is banned. If you're caught looking at it, you could face fines. If you keep doing it, we might have to send you to jail. Prostitution, however, is regulated and kind of brought out of the shadows. That's my position.
Okay, so my position on pornography is I don't think an outright ban is like there. I think there's some kinds of milder pornography which can almost be beneficial. Like you
Sure.
learn from it, like it's your first experience at a young age, and not everyone is necessarily going to have that experience, but they have a right to have some kind of sexual satisfaction. So I think it's a good thing. I think that the industry really needs to be regulated. Like I've had my own problems with pornography. Like I don't want to seem weak, but I have similar to like what other people have had, and it's like I just have noticed, and this was what helped me quit, is that like the front pages of these websites become more and more degenerate every single day. Like
Oh yeah.
it went from having like like oh mature older woman to you're fucking your stepmom, you're fucking your
Yeah.
stepsister, you're fucking your stepdaughter. Like it's just like the
Yeah,
most yeah.
when you go on Pornhub, that is almost like 70% of what's shown.
Yeah.
It is outrageous. And yeah, and look, I am also not innocent in here. I would never claim that I'm innocent in this regard. Of course, I've looked at pornography. I've never had a full-on addiction. I remember sometimes when I was younger, I probably would like go in some 3-hour bender or something late at night, but I don't do that anymore. But I don't like any of that stepmom dad shit. So that's not what I look at, and yet it's continually pushed. Like whenever I'll, have in a moment of weakness visit you porn or whatever, you'll see that, and it's like I'm not even looking at it. It's not even like algorithmic. It's almost like it's like a editorial decision, from what I can tell, and
It's yeah.
just awful.
To me, like I almost wonder. This is kind of like my conspiracy theory. This like might be wildly off base. Like my interests, like completely diametrically opposed to normal people. But I think reality television was pushed in similar way. Like it was like an editorial. believe anyone actually enjoys that shit. Like that is like some of the most brain dead shit imaginable. Even show like I get kind of the
Yeah,
game show vibe is kind of fun, but when you're following around people like living their life, like keeping up with the Kardashians, like I understand how Ye went crazy because that is the
yeah,
most mind-numbingly like boring shit I've ever
it
seen.
is.
But as for like
It is so
porno,
much worse, and it also, yeah, I totally agree. Now, obviously, there's some cool. There was almost like a genre that came out of reality TV. Like, um, have you ever seen River Monsters or something like that's
oh yeah,
kind?
that's like amazing. But I actually don't feel
That's
like those. I don't think those come from reality television. Like
okay,
you look at like what was the
but you know what
Australian
I
guys?
mean. There's
Yeah,
a genre of like it is kind of reality, or there'll be some shows of like what it's like to be a lumberjack in Alaska or whatever. It's where there's some like there's some content to that. Actually, with River Monsters, there's a lot of content there.
I
That
felt
was a
like
fun
that was
show.
an educational show. Like you just learned
Yeah,
about like fish from it. I thought it was very good. Yeah.
yeah.
Wait, speaking of some brain dead shit, I'm pretty sure that was the previous phrase that was used. Yugi, did you use a skin colored emoji in the chat?
I'm. It's my skin color.
Yeah. How'd you do that? Because is this yellow?
Yeah, you
Yes.
can like press the button
Oh,
like
word,
and
word,
then
word, word,
and
word,
then you can find your own skin color.
word,
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
No
All
problem.
right.
Yeah. But I just wanted to continue. With pornography, like, yeah, I think milder. And as for, I think there has to be some sort of rehabilitation towards, in particular, the woman working in the pornography industry, because, like, I feel like they're brought in from like very kind of abusive pasts and stuff like this. And Ye actually made a very good point. Like, I don't think this is 100% accurate, like in every single case, but like you're witnessing like a woman like relive her like trauma like
Yes.
on
I
screen.
thought
Like,
that was a powerful point too.
yeah,
Now, I don't think it is entirely true. I mean, there's no doubt that like a higher percentage than the the average population were abused as children or something. Like I don't have any doubt about that. But I don't think it's entirely true, but I think it's a very powerful thing to say.
well,
And I agree.
well, either way, I think it's a mistake for the people to do it. And I think they should be rehabilitated because it's a pretty terrible mistake. And I wouldn't want them to like. I mean, maybe this is just me being too generous. Like
Right.
I imagine I saying this to me a couple years ago, I would have just totally lost it. But like I've really softened over the years, and I think there should be some sort of rehabilitation. Now, you did say this, Mark, about prostitution, saying it should be legal and
Yes.
regulated, and I disagree. I think it should be completely illegal. Like I think
Okay.
prostitution is like absolutely terrible. I think it's worse than pornography because it's fake. It's not real. Like that woman does not want to have
Well, I know,
relations.
but in
How is it
comparison
not
to
real?
porn, it's definitely
It's like the
real.
most
Yeah,
real
but
thing
like
there
okay,
is.
well, it's not like the intimacy factor is not real. Is what I'm trying to say, right?
Well,
Like
who are you to say that
Yeah,
in
you're.
a way?
I think you still are kind of like addicted, and you're kind of like trying to fight through it, and that you
Well,
kind of have to.
this is what I would say is that and also left whatever your name is, let me respond to the callers. I'll get to you, but
Oh, that
this
was
is my
me.
space.
That wasn't him. That was me.
Yeah, I'm gonna do you. Just I'll respond to the callers, and I'll give you the floor at some point. But that's how it works. This isn't a free for all. Um, where were we? Oh, where? What? Oh, just get me back on the train there. What was the last
I
point?
was saying something like it's a prostitution. It's not a real sexual experience or
Oh,
something.
but I think it is very real, specifically in comparison to pornography. I mean, who are you to say that that lonely man, doesn't kind of have a moment of intimacy, however kind of mediated and imperfect it
Well, I
might
think a
be?
lot of those women are like you look at like pornography, like I think with prostitution, an even greater portion of the women are victims of abuse. Like you look at a lot of prostitutes are actually just like kind of like
Well,
slaves.
that's because it's illegal. And, you know, there's no doubt that there's horrible human trafficking going on. I mean, look, pornography, prostitution. And by the way, I've never visited a prostitute in my entire life. So for what that's worth, I actually have this very strong memory of when I was in Germany and prostitution was legal, and there was this very cute prostitute who was begging me to take her. She kept lowering the price, and I was like, I don't know, just kind of feels weird. And anyway, didn't do it. But anyway, yeah, okay. There was something I was going to say. Oh, I think porn reveals something important about the American population, and that is its fundamental puritanical nature, which derives from our pre-founding, say, of the types of religious nuts who came here. And also keep in mind, all of these people who are like, the liberals or whatever, many of the WASP, they ultimately derive from that stock of people. And but anyway, so we have a fundamentally puritanical culture, as hard to believe as that might be, looking at advertising in Times Square or whatever. But porn is this kind of like flip side of the Puritan, where you're not actually going out into the world and experiencing life for what it is. And instead, you're kind of lost in some kind of sadomasochistic hyper reality. And that is definitely something that, again, I was not born with that spirit because my ancestors didn't flee, they weren't. Apparently, the Pilgrims believed that the Church of England wasn't intolerant enough or wasn't just insane enough. I don't have any biblical fundamentalist in my family, so I just don't resonate to their nonsense. And I've always sniffed it out. I always know a fundamentalist or a Puritan when I see one. But this is something that they basically respond to, which is that you're not going to go out into the world and experience something real. You're not going to be a real man. You're instead going to kind of like go into your attic and experience the beyond wickedness through virtual reality. And I just think it's a deeply unhealthy thing. And I would much rather people again have some quality of reality to their life than to live in the virtual reality that's even better than the real thing.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. Can we move to the other parts of this, the what is woke and more, and move past the porn?
Okay. All right.
So,
did I answer your question?
Yeah, that was good.
Okay.
I feel very satisfied.
Yeah, listen, Left, you're kind of annoying me, to be frank. And if I get even slightly more annoyed, you're gone. Okay? I'm just going to warn you. This is not yours. Actually, I'm just going to kick you off.
Wait, can I say why I'm here?
Left, this is not your space. This is my space. Okay? And I hope you recognize that. Okay, Paul, you have the floor.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yeah. So I think woke is like, it can mean a lot of things. So I think there's kind of like a generational thing to it, that woke can kind of mean just like a millennial or a Gen Xer. Or not Gen Xer, like a millennial or Gen Zer to like maybe like a boomer or a Gen Xer. Like when they see that work, they might think just like an inexperienced person fresh out of college who has kind of like the new ideas or something. So they probably kind of resent that, or they fear a younger generation. I think there is something to that, because I don't necessarily say woke. I think woke is kind of like, I don't know, like cringe or something. It's like, I just don't say it normally in like real life. I don't know. I think it's something that you hear probably on TV more than like
let me pick
podcast.
up on the generational thing a little bit, because I think that is definitely a factor. It is kind of like what's wrong with kids these days is one definition of woke. But I think there's some other aspects to it as well. You know, boomers lived in this amazing period after the Second World War. They didn't have to go to war. They did. Look, I'm not the first one to say this. What I'm saying might be kind of cliched in a way, but I'm getting to a bigger point. They lived in this amazing boom time after 1945. And that went up to the period of the mid to late 60s when there was a major stock market reversal. And then you went into the 70s with stagflation and all the rest of it. So when they were kind of entering their 20s and 30s, there was more anxiety. And this coincided with the sexual revolution, the cultural revolution, etc. Then, once they kind of settled down and they were more or less my age, boom, it's the 1980s, and we have a very long term situation of falling interest rates, rising stock markets, increased home ownership, etc. And so the boomers are kind of like, if we define woke as awareness of systemic injustice, the boomers are kind of like, what is the problem? Why are you rocking the boat here? Everything's great. You know, like I got a job part-time and paid for college, and I got a job right out of college, and next thing you know, I had a mortgage. And there's this lowered expectation that I think really does coincide with awareness of injustice, where millennials and Gen Z are more likely to say, like, the system's rigged. No one can get ahead. It's the, bad white guys are always on top, and life sucks, and you won't give me health care, and I can't pay my $200,000 student loan, all of that kind of stuff. It seems to kind of, you know, notions of woke kind of marinate in that type of environment. So I do think it's like fundamentally different experiences between, say, boomers mainly, Gen Xers to a lesser degree, but then the divide really is with young people who have just experienced kind of like one lowering of their life expectation after another. And so such an environment, notions of critical race theory and systemic injustice, et cetera, can kind of marinate. So I do think there's a strong generational component to it. All right. I'm actually going to let this left's take guy back in.
A bunch of my
So
friends
have you learned your
told
lesson?
me you're a Biden and Hillary supporter. Is that true?
A Biden and Hillary supporter. I voted for Joe Biden, did not vote for Hillary Clinton.
Did you vote for Trump?
In 2016, I did, yes. Do you not know who I am?
No.
Why are you here?
A bunch of my friends just want me to debate.
Okay. Really annoying character. A bunch of my friends want me to debate you. You like Joe Biden. Okay. I also asked him whether he learned his lesson, and he didn't even acknowledge my question, indicating that he didn't. All right, guys. Yakub.
Oh, hi everyone.
Okay.
I felt a little need to push back on your comments about woke being hard to define, because it seems to me that there's a core of it in BLM and trans. Maybe you could expand BLM.
And those are like really, I agree that those are kind of on the left, but wouldn't you say that the connection of those two issues is kind of a result of polarization? Like there's, just standing outside of left-right politics, there doesn't seem to be much common ground between the transsexual movement and BLM. But go,
I think they do.
If you think I'm wrong, okay.
I think they have a common thread in this this kind of buzz phrase we hear all the time, social construction or debunking. There are thriving pseudosciences of race and sex denial,
Right.
that are in vogue today. And the misguided youth, in a very kind of Gnostic way, have seen through these tricks of the demiurge. There are no races. Men can be women. I think these. Oh, and kind of piggybacking on it is the fat thing, which gets less traction. But well, in leftist circles, you have to watch what you say about the fat, and that's quite similar. And of course, they're just denying
Okay,
the thermodynamics of calories,
I
which is
agree with you,
ridiculous.
but isn't didn't BLM? I mean, isn't it almost like meaningless if race doesn't exist? I mean, I and I think people are kind of fluid on this, but I don't think people. I think a very few people actually believe that there's like no biological or historical. I mean, look, to some degree, race is socially constructed. I mean, on some level, in the sense that races developed through prehistory and history with things like politics and religion and social order and so on, which influenced the development of races and ethnicities, certainly ethnicities. So, it's a little more of a complicated thing. But I don't think anyone outside of like true lunatics actually deny the existence of race, like in their heart. Um, and yes, there are some people like this, but wouldn't BLM kind of have no essence if it's just all a social construct? I mean, it's just, it kind of like vanishes into thin air if you presume that. And so much of
Well,
BLM was this like call to the us. It was for blacks, it was like, this is about us, and like, we're not going to be systemically oppressed anymore, or etc. And then with whites, it was, you know, it definitely called on a kind of deep Christian quality of guilt and so on. There's actually someone in here right now who has a Christian background, which I was not in the slightest bit surprised to learn about. Um, who basically, I don't know, it's like they have these structures of thought that were placed into them when they were children, but also kind of bred into them. Like married other Christians. There was this. There's a certain development of a kind of personality type who would be a Christian, and you can almost see it in them, just in their looks, in fact. And the fact that in the 21st century they kind of flip over into hysteria about race and so on is really not in the slightest bit surprising. In fact, it is a deeply Christian motive. I mean, look, at the end of the day, there is no Greek or Jew. There is no man or woman. We're all one in Christ. I mean, this is the absolute origin of, I would say the left in general, but all of this, kind of social ideology that's been going on for quite some time. It is Christian at its fundamental root. And the
I
civil
agree.
rights movement was a kind of just Christian. I mean, it doesn't, it comes from somewhere. And that's not to say that many or most of the people who are like raging about woke and who are vote Republican or anti-left aren't like evangelical Christians. No, I'm not denying that. But it's just this kind of curious fact where the real expressed ideology of their religion is actually the like articulated ideology of their so-called enemies. And I've said this to many leftists, and they don't. Some will kind of sort of agree, but I don't think any of them really take this to heart. Like, it's just so obvious looking at it. Like, this is what Christianity is. Christianity is dying slowly in terms of attendance and express belief, but it's never going to really die because you have all these people who, you know, have a God-shaped hole in their heart and it needs to be filled.
Yeah.
And it's gonna go somewhere. And so anyway, I guess this is kind of like a bigger thing. I definitely don't believe in any kind of secularization thesis. And I think a lot of people, you know, there's a reason even as well why all of this is kind of coming from America, due to the types of people who are the founding stock. Types of
Yeah.
people I don't like, by the way.
Yeah, I really agree about the Christian stuff. I should add as a side note that please no one see me as the kind of person who contrasts Gnosticism with Christianity. That
Okay.
annoys me to no end. They're the same thing: soul superstition, slave morality, seeing through the world. And woke is clearly in that ballpark. They've seen through the demiurge's tricks, alternately Satan's tricks, whatever.
Right.
And now the world of pure love is coming. As on the topic of
Yes.
race, racial reality,
And you know, and also the
I might
Satan. Like I think Ye is a kind of Satan. You know, Nick Fuentes is a kind of Satan. Alex Jones is Satan. Richard Spencer is a Satan. You know, they kind of fixate on these people who I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe Satan tempts them or something. I don't know what it is, but they fixate on people who with maybe Ye notwithstanding here, don't actually have the power that you see other people hold in society. You know, like Nick Fuentes is not a billionaire. Nick Fuentes isn't on the board of a corporation. Nick Fuentes doesn't own a television station. Yet he is kind of more evil in their mind because again, they're not actually Marxist and they're not actually leftist as they understand it. They're all Christians.
Yeah,
You know, like
religious crimes, heresy and blasphemy are usually treated as the most serious.
yes, yeah. And this gets back to the woke discussion, which so not all of woke is about this. I think there are people who genuinely want to, you know, defund the police or do reforms or what have you. But woke, at least as it manifests itself, is in I guess transsexuality. That's also a little bit different here, but bear with me. Woke as it manifests itself is mostly about language and thus consciousness. You know, it's about being aware of the slave trade. We're not going to sweep this under the rug anymore. It's about being aware of your own privilege, you know, like all these silly, you know, over white women, you know, living in luxurious circumstances who want to kind of go through a you know, an self understanding and a kind of purge of this privilege or so on. Confession even.
When not only
All
do
of
they
that is
want to
fundamentally
cry,
religious. Go ahead.
not only do they want to cry, they want to be told it doesn't matter that they're crying.
Mm.
The tears we've had, white women's tears will not get you anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, as far as race, I guess I just want to clarify that yes, everyone believes that it exists. It's, I mean, you couldn't really not, um, but they'll ignore other things like obviously IQ. They're not going to touch, but they're not even going to touch crime rates, which could be explained through some other method. I mean, there are softer ways to refute BLM claims than going pure full Jared Taylor. You could
Sure.
argue that hey, there are sociological factors that cause the crime, and then the crime causes the policing, and actually per arrest they're not treated any more harshly, etc. But I think the advance of Kendiism, which is really an epistemic retreat, is that um, they're not really looking at sociology anymore. Like his big axiom is disparate outcome means discrimination.
Right.
They're basically saying you don't have to find the mechanism, because if there were a racist system, it wouldn't be systemic racism; it would be the regular kind.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's what really gives wokeism its Gnostic quality. Like it's like the Holy Spirit touches your heart. Like if you're a good person, you know that woke is true, and even having a debate about it is in a way oppressive.
Yeah. I think also there was another aspect of political correctness that I remember from the 90s of, hey, hey, ho, ho, Western Civ has got to go. That was chanted by Jesse Jackson and so on. And I think as we reach a truly multiracial nation that we're approaching now in the United States, these things have to be dealt with in some way, and I think they're going to be kind of dealt with in ham-fisted manners. So, a lot of the liberal attitude is basically let's turn non-white people into little Englishmen, and you could see this. So, accompanying very harsh treatment towards Native Americans, harsh treatment which I would never deny. In fact, there was also an attempt to convert them to Christianity. There was an attempt to, in fact, change their dress, make them into little Englishmen or little Westerners. And I think you kind of see that now, in academia. I mean, like, for instance, I don't even have a television, but, whenever I'll see a video of, something like MSNBC, they'll have, a multiracial or non-white woman who's has a degree from Yale, and she's talking about the Trump stuff, and she's, referencing the Constitution and making strong logical arguments. That's the kind of that's the success of basically turning other races into Westerners. It has been achieved to a large degree, and there are many people who are quite intelligent and succeed at this kind of thing. But there's a kind of countervailing trend, which is the reverse, where you actually have people saying that grammar is white supremacist and math is white supremacist, and they kind of have a point on some level, and so but it's like, no, you can't even understand my community. You can't access it. You can't be a part of it. We are tribal. And so I think there are these kind of two big countervailing forces. And I don't think we know how we're going to work it out. Which one is it? Is it that we're going to have non-white people get STEM degrees or go to law school or become poets or whatever? Or is it that we as myself as a white man, I couldn't even possibly understand this other culture. We're just totally separate. I shouldn't even try to understand it, which would be a kind of act of colonialism. We're just totally separate. And I think both of these things are happening at once, and they're both actually fairly powerful, and most people kind of want to have it both ways.
What if they're two tiers? What if it's kind of Catholic, like consecrated religious versus laity?
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think so. The consecrated religious people are those in academia or, etc. What I don't really like this term, but okay, I'll just use it. The cathedral seems to be apt here. And then the laity are those who are kind of expressing liberalism, but doing it in a radically different way. So, for instance, voodoo is a kind of Catholicism. People forget this. It's a true kind of syncretic mix of tribal religions, but it kind of has a Christian structure, in fact. And so you would kind of allow that to happen on the bottom, and the top there would be Roman Catholicism. I think that's actually an interesting way of thinking. I think that's probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not would those people turn on the successful black people? It's no, they would just say, yes, queen.
Right.
They're only ever gonna fight back against whites. and people of color are showing up on time, working hard, having intact families, etc. Like they're never going to try to stop that.
Right.
Hey,
Okay.
Richard.
Thanks for your comments. Let me just go down in order here. So Andrew has been waiting for a while. Andrew, you're up next.
Sure.
Hey, what's going on?
What's up, man?
I have a. I think these things are kind of related. The woke and the porn thing. I think they're related in the sense that like the woke, as I see them, are like the cutting edge of like, I don't know what you would call it, like liberation, hypermoralism, basically like the Christians of, our day. And the porn addict is kind of like he's on the cutting edge of, like, I guess the way I could sum it up is like this. Like the most woke person, and I've been reading a little bit of Ed Dutton lately, so forgive me, but the most woke person is like the kind of person who's literally advocating, like a NAMBLA member, or like we need to, legalize these kind of, child man or whatever relationship. And the porn addict, because it's like people are just becoming porn addicts and internet addicts overall, but is like watching like bestiality or like nearing child pornography, which is not crazy for me to say, because in this book on what's it called, Your Brain on Porn, I read like a couple of years ago that actually like the younger you start out watching porn, the more likely you are to just go from straight sex between a man and a woman to veering off into literally like bestiality and then like, yeah, some pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah,
but
I can imagine. Well, it has that addiction quality to it. So,
yes,
many people, I've actually cut down quite a bit on alcohol. I'm proud to say, but most people on this call, we'll have a glass of wine with dinner or have a beer on the weekend or whatever. We're kind of functioning alcoholics. Let's be honest.
right.
We we can't really do without it. That being said, we're not in the gutter. We don't wake up in the morning and down a bottle of gin or something. And so addiction doesn't have to lead there. And there are lots of people who will smoke a cigar on occasion, or they'll smoke one or two cigarettes or a day or something like that. It's a vice. Not doesn't, but there is a very strong quality to addiction of you just need a stronger and stronger hit.
Right.
And so that happens to people. I mean, some people just they can't have a beer in their refrigerator, or they're going to end up in the gutter, at the end of the weekend or something like that. And I think porn really does have that quality, even for people who just kind of casually view it. I'm being totally honest here. I'm not a porn addict, but I'm also not innocent. I'm not going to ever claim that I don't look at it. I've never seen like truly beyond the pale stuff, but sure, sometimes when you're watching it, you'll end up someplace and it's just like, what the fuck is this? This is really appalling. But you just kind of need the stronger hit. It's kind of like you go out drinking with your friends, you have a few beers, next thing you're doing Jaeger shots or whatever. Next thing you know, some guy has a harder drug. Oh yeah, let's do. So it's a really dangerous thing, and it can really harm you.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no doubt. I have no doubt in my mind, particularly a young person who doesn't have any self-control, like they'll end up in some nightmare version of pornography pretty quickly.
There were even in that book, accounts of like homosexual men, their taste getting changed to where they like couldn't get off until they saw like women involved, and then it wasn't until they quit that like it went back to normal. Well,
so they became
know what I mean?
more kind of like polymorphic or polyamorous.
Right.
That's
and
interesting.
there were.
I've also there was some article that I remember got passed around. I have to go look at it, but it was saying that men who viewed so-called like she-male or transsexual porn became more like accommodating to transsexual people because of So like this
Right. Yeah.
bizarre fetish like changed their political outlook or social outlook.
That's why Alex Jones is a libertarian.
Right. We know. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it. Yeah. They're so afraid. Like people, whenever you start talking about like banning speech or banning toxic material, people just get like, they're on edge when you say that, and it's because you're really tapping into something. They're gonna miss this horrible shit they're addicted to.
Right.
I mean, they are, because they know what they know what we would do. And look, I think, if we banned porn, there would probably be some kind of accommodation for like light porn, something that's somewhat erotic. Maybe it's, if you're over 18 or over 21, you can kind of do this, but but they know that they're going to lose their fix, that really nasty stuff that they can't, and it's like banning speech or something. Like whenever you say, like when I've said like ban 4chan or ban Gab or all this kind of crap out there, they're like, oh no, you just, these guys think that they're like changing the world or, promoting political candidates. And it's like, at the end of the day, all you're doing is yelling the N word.
Yeah.
Or like showing images, like looking at images of animal cruelty on 4, like that's all you're doing.
Right.
And when someone even mentions like taking that away from them, it's like you're taking away their pony. But it is something clearly they're addicted to. And I think they realize that they're not really capable of anything else. Like, you take away my ability to yell the N-word, then who am I really?
Right. And there also is that kind of like Darwin Award on some level with these people who, I mean, the person who's more likely to get addicted to porn is that kind of depressed, anxious, antisocial type.
Sure.
And but it's kind of like it's like the LGBT stuff in general. It's like those people are not going to reproduce, or they're going to have a much harder time reproducing, because looking at porn, being a voyeur, is 180 degrees different from actually having sex with a woman. And
right.
it's pretty I don't like that if you go see a prostitute, you're actually engaging. That's the difference. It's like when you watch porn, you're literally cucking yourself. Like you're watching that guy, go to town on that girl. Hopefully that's all that's going on, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, even in a homosexual scenario, you're still kind of being cucked in a way. Yeah.
Yes. But I do think that does relate to the woke, in the sense, like I said, that they're like pushing the envelope. What's the next thing? Like we're getting like further and further. And I guess somebody like maybe Judith Butler would.
Okay. Well, hold on. You were mentioning Butler. What are you saying about her?
I was just going to say that maybe she's like that because it was like I haven't read her, to be honest, but I've just seen and kind of heard little clips here and there of like she's basically pushing for. I could be wrong, but she's pushing for that kind of. Even somebody like Allen Ginsberg, who was like an actual member of NAMBLA, like that kind of thing.
Well, okay, this is one thing to keep in mind. First off, Judith Butler is a fairly interesting theorist. I've only read Gender Trouble, so I've only read her like 90s stuff. And it was assigned to me, but I actually did find it quite interesting. But I don't know. So I don't want to tar her with some brush if she's promoting pedophilia. But
sure.
But she might be. I don't know. I just simply don't know. But I would say this. Don't you think that it's a bit of a bridge too far? I mean, even in Dutton, who's in a way kind of more traditionally conservative than I am, like even he kind of tempered this, because a lot of the pedophilia was being promoted in the 70s, and it really did go away. Actually, it really was just a bridge too far, and it was just obviously an attempt for like, lecherous people to like have sex with a 15-year-old or something, because it's like, it was just so kind of out there. Now, maybe it would kind of rear its head in some new form. I don't know. I just feel like it's a little bit of, it's just a little bit much. Like it's just a kind of a bridge too far. I mean, what I think, how I would describe transsexuality, it's not even about the act itself. Like, keep in mind, millennials are Puritans, and Gen Z, they're Puritans. They're not having sex. They're having much less sex than their church-going parents and grandparents at that age. They're a bunch of losers.
Yeah.
And
well, they're watching, I guess.
They're watching it, right? But that's very different. You're not doing
yes.
it.
Yeah.
And so it's like you have all these like weirdos, you know, engaging in pornography or kind of experience. They're like trying to deconstruct themselves and experience some, you know, oh, I've discovered my new, you know, I'm a demisexual or whatever, you know, they're kind of like going into the interior and they're not actually doing anything in the world. And so I don't think all of this obsession isn't about sex itself, because they're having less sex. And one of the interesting things in Judith Butler's book is, and she's being influenced by Foucault in this, she warns people about making sex a truth claim. Like, you need to, like, from her view, you need to kind of experience the kind of like Dionysian quality of sex. And I don't know, I actually kind of agree with her on that. But putting that aside, all of these sexless nerds, wimps, and losers of the millennial generation or Gen Z, they're making it the ultimate truth claim. They're making it themselves. It's their identity is this new thing about themselves that they've discovered. And the pronouns kind of goes along with that. You know, I'm a she, or I'm a they, or I'm a whatever. Well, and so they're not making it a revolutionary act in the real world. They're doing the exact opposite. They're making it a truth claim about themselves, which makes it, in my mind, even more contemptible.
It kind of goes to that narcissism that I mean, you edited the book, so you would know, but that Dutton talks about with a lot of transsexuals, that they're like fetishizing themselves, or themselves being a woman or being whatever.
Right. I mean, it gets to what I've said before. It's like, just because you've discovered some, like, first off, look, everyone has a feminine side, right? Every woman has kind of a masculine side. I was actually talking with someone the other day who's queer, I guess is the right word. And she was saying, like, there used to be people, like a woman who wore a plaid shirt and drove a pickup truck. She didn't have to like find a new word for herself. She was still a woman, you know? And like, it's not that, you know, you just happen, like, you know, look, they're women, they're into horses, and they're kind of like more rough and tough and stronger, you know, than other women. I mean, it just is what it is. It's cool. I'm actually very like tolerant of all of this stuff, you know? And it's not, and there's some girls who are obsessed with dresses and whatever. You don't need to make a truth claim about that. Like, you're still a woman. But I guess I lost my train there for a second. But like, I think it's also these generations are just such losers, maybe not to their own fault, but to a large degree, it is their fault, that they like want to be special and interesting, you know? And it's like, listen, Caitlin, you're not actually more like multi-sexual than I am. I also have a bit of a feminine side. I have a little frivolous side to myself. Sex is, the libido is kind of bisexual, or maybe even not bisexual, like multi-sexual. Like the libido drive itself is extremely strong, but it can kind of manifest in all sorts of ways. And, you know, you're not like special by like giving this a name. You know what I mean? Like, you're just still some kind of boring teenager. And go read a book and say something that's a contribution to discourse. Don't tell me your sexual identity. It's irrelevant. And believe it or not, that like Trump voting grandmother who you think is so boring or whatever, might also have a little bacchanal side to her. Yeah, let's say.
Yeah.
Because everyone does. Just get over it. Get over yourself. Don't make it a truth claim, because it's not a truth claim. That the libido is ultimately a kind of, it's like a river that flows. It's not something that can be tied down. And all these new names we give it are just frivolous.
So
meaningless.
Would you say that this is, I feel like I know the answer, that this kind of thing that you're describing it kind of comes from this, I feel like in the ancient world there was a better kind of understanding of what you're describing.
Yeah.
Where, yeah. So, I mean, I feel like the answer is going to be yes, but do you feel like this is this individualistic kind of Christians? We're on the, this is how we're viewing it, I guess, almost like we're like, it's hard to say. It's just, I guess,
it
the
is
puritanical.
Christian. I would say this. You look, many the notion of like a transsexual does presuppose a notion of an immortal soul. And here's my reasoning behind that claim. Yes, there are people who are genuinely intersex. And this will sometimes be pointed out by trans activists that like some people have 3 chromosomes, or some people have XX
Right.
chromosomes, but they have the expression of XY. Yes, that is absolutely true. In fact, there's actually an interesting like Olympic athlete who had XY. She was a female, as her genitalia was expressed as female. She identified as a female. She actually had XY chromosomes. Go look it up. There was kind of like a debate. I think she might have even had her medal stripped from her, something like that. So these people, it may be unfairly, to be honest here, but anyway,
right.
These people exist. Like, there's no doubt that those exist, but it really is like very exceptional. Most of the men who become women, or vice versa, they're not claiming that they have a chromosomal thing or DNA. They're claiming that they have a soul. Like, I am a woman. This is my true expression of my inner being, and I've always known it, although I didn't discover it. None of that exists outside of the framework of the immortal soul. Now, the immortal soul goes back to Egypt, certainly goes to Plato, but at least in our context, it is a Christian notion. So, I mean, again, this other like irony where like the transsexual movement is kind of like the ultimate expression of Christianity, maybe, and I mean ultimate in the sense of like a dying or last expression of Christianity.
Right. The last thing I was going to say is that I was reading this. I can't remember the title off the top of my head. Anyway, I was reading this book about early Christianity and how the Romans saw them, something like that. And the idea to Romans of this idea of conversion was foreign to them, like that you would convert and you would be like it was very individualistic. And for them, according to, if I can remember this correctly, like if you went to a different town, you would honor the whatever Athena's or Rome's or Athens' gods. And that idea of conversion, I mean, it strikes me as, yeah, it's just kind of Christian, I guess, but it's in a totally different way. It's very modern or postmodern, however you want to characterize it.
Right. Like, you would, if I went to China, I would honor their gods in a way. And that didn't mean that I was demeaning my own gods. It was just a kind of expression of respect. There wasn't this like personal, emotional conversion experience that took place.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. All right, let me move on just for the sake of time. And thanks for your comments. That was a very good discussion. Bono.
Hey, Mr. Richard Spencer.
How are you doing?
Big
Mr.
fan.
Bono.
Just been watching you Just saw you were shouted out by Nick Fuentes in his recent space, and just been wondering about that whole your thoughts on. I know you were in the last space you did about him. You were saying some positive things, and
Yeah.
by Ye too. What do you think of joining Cozy TV? Do you think you would join Cozy TV? I know it's kind of a silly question.
No,
But...
no, I'm not going to join Cozy. I'm very happy with my system currently.
Okay.
And look, I don't know if I want to go into the Ye thing. I mean, I did feel like very early on, Nick kind of had it out for me and so on. And I just disagreed with a lot of the politics, just on a non-personal level. But like, look, I'm gonna shoot everyone straight. Like, I want you guys to trust me that I'm not holding any kind of personal animus. There is something deeply authentic about Yeism, and there's something, in that when I listened to that space with Fuentes, there was something I felt a little bit desperate, but maybe in a good way, about what he was doing with Ye. And so I think what they're doing is powerful, and it could fizzle out, it could go up in flames, it could actually be a long-standing movement. And it's not what I would do exactly, but I kind of respect people when they just kind of lay it all out there, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard for me to like really counter signal them when they're being like bold and just like being, let their flag fly, let their freak flag fly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just kind of, I don't know. I don't like it when people are trying to trick other people in this like very cheap way, or they're just doing something that I find tedious. But when they're being true to themselves and authentic, I can't, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. And also, what do you think of BAP? Because he's been very. I don't know if you like BAP or you're against BAP, but he's been counter signaling the Ye thing a lot. Bronze Age pervert, that is. He's been like hating on the Ye Nick thing. I don't know what your thoughts on him are.
I imagine he will just counter signal pretty much everything. And those, I think, BAP, you have this like weird gay bodybuilding stuff, and then like teenage Nietzsche, whatever. But I think also what I hear from him is how, you can't ever use a name, the face lords or the enemy, and you need to work behind the scenes. We should just trust that all these Baptists are working behind their scenes. They're meeting up with their local sheriff, planning to ban ethos from their town or something. Who knows what they're doing? But I just find that bullshit. I find that just a obvious rationalization of cowardice.
Yeah.
You gotta go out there. You gotta strongly say what you believe.
Yeah, he's always like believing like he's like a secret Hitler bodybuilder, but he's also gonna, he's gonna infiltrate the system. He's gonna be like Straussian and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's not good.
Give me a break.
Exactly.
All right, man. Thanks for your comments. I appreciate it. And I'm going to move on. So, Nifty 50.
Hey, Richard.
Hey.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, I was gonna the thing on the porn thing. I was gonna ask. I'm a millennial myself. I'm 25. So, what do you think about the whole porn thing with the whole decline in the birth rates? Do you think more people like my age and maybe younger and like older up to like 35, maybe they're just so more so like just sitting at home?
Yeah, I mean,
porn.
I know, I see where you're going with this. I definitely think there's a connection. Now, which is causing which is an interesting question. So you could kind of make a strong argument either way, and you could make an argument that we're all isolated, lonely to begin with, and that's why we're going to porn. Are we really isolated and lonely because we're watching porn? I mean, I think maybe it's both to a degree, but there's definitely a connection. And I think that more elite people. I mean, JD Vance is a part of the elite to some degree. I mean, he had a very well received book. He's obviously a senator at this point, so there it is. He's certainly not part of the super elite or something like the people who are paying him. And also with the Roe thing, there are elite factions who are worried about the birth rate and almost want to kind of like force Americans to get in line with this and say, we're going to make abortion illegal, and we're going to ban porn. Again, I'm against making abortion legal. I as I've stated, I actually am in favor of banning pornography. So, but I think some people are kind of, they're dealing with this matter because things are going to get interesting in the world, because it's not just like the decadent West or something. Rates are collapsing in Mexico, for instance. It is a global thing. And so we've reached 8 billion people, but over the course of the next 100 years, we're going to see a strong decline in populations. And I think a country as powerful as America could probably work through that. And immigration would, immigration has a lot of problems, but it could help that. But other countries, they might really go through a death spiral because they have, existing entitlements planned for the future. And, I don't know. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be of global importance going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's kind of like when you see this pornography stuff, it's like it takes you down this weird, kind of rabbit hole thing, because porn's been around for a long time. You've had it in magazines, VHS, and all these other things. But it seems like now it's at your fingertips. It's literally right here on Twitter, and this whole OnlyFans things and things like that. But it's more so like you see this weird, and I've been on these dating sites or whatever, the hookup culture, and of course that's horrible too, the dating scene here. But I think this plays into it. Like you see these women on Bumble or Tinder or Hinge or whatever, and you talk to them, and they have these weird fetishes beyond the imagination you could ever think of. I don't even want to get into it. It's so bad.
Someone else told this to me. So someone told me that you meet younger women on dating sites, and they'll talk about these weird fetishes that they have, and you're just like, what in the fuck?
It's I'm telling you, I've had some tell me I have this trans friend who wants to watch, and it's like, what? Where are we going with this? I have no idea. I'm serious, and I've seen pregnant women hey, just want to do this till I'm in birth. I don't know. It's the weirdest thing, and it's I know this stuff stems from pornography because an average human being does not sit around and think about that. And it also creates that this kind of this super predator, not super, but this predator mentality in men and some women's head, where they're okay, I can meet up with this person I've never met. They live in another town. They can come over, fulfill my fantasies, go back home, and nobody ever knows what happens.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where this goes with this whole I guess it goes in with this trans movement or this LGBT movement or whatever. I think it really stems from a pornography standpoint. What do you think of that?
I definitely think there's a connection.
Yeah.
But which way? I think that the lines of causality probably flow both ways. So I think porn creates loneliness, and then also loneliness creates porn. So it's a weird thing. But I definitely agree with the weird sexual proclivities. They learned this somewhere, and they were inured to it when they were quite young. Yeah. And so there isn't anything shocking. I mean, even when I was younger, when I was in high school and the internet was just coming out, even then, there was not video yet, and the page had to load. So you would almost have a strip tease where the page would slowly load, and then you'd see the breast, and then her, lower
Yeah.
half. It's kind of
Dial-up
funny.
internet.
Yeah, dial-up internet. And so, but now, like, I mean, from what I've heard, average porn exposure can start at 9, and it can go to like 11 or 12. And again, you just do a brief perusal of Pornhub, and or YouPorn or wherever they're going, you could just find a nightmarish situation, and they're exposed to that when they're 11, and so when they're 20, it's not anything shocking.
Yeah, it's just like second nature to them. They see this stuff, and it's like, and I think that plays a big role into it too. Like, I think that this pornography thing, it is bigger than anything that a government policy could ever be signed into place, because it's an outside reach, and it's changing the culture that we live in. Like, where, if you're not this top-notch guy, you're making 6 figures, you're 6 foot tall, you're this Chad. We don't want anything to do with you unless we've got this fetish, of we want to be with these anorexic, skinny nerd men or whatever.
Right.
Like, I just think it's just horrible the way this thing is going, and the birth rates and everything else in between that is just, it's collapsing. And like you said, it overlapses with one another. But it's like, to what degree do we stop it? Because even if you do put a ban on porn, people are still going to find a way around it, like they do with drugs, guns, whatever the case may be.
But it's still a lot harder. This is where I would like, we could actually ban these sites and have very stiff fines on the promoters of porn, and probably lesser fines on the consumers of porn, and it will slow it down.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, it just you got to do something.
If I can interject here, I think
sure,
porn is kind of an American export. There's 7 billion people. There's maybe 2 or 3 countries that are producing the vast majority of porn that's then consumed globally. So if you close down production studios in the United States, that would get rid of, who knows, like 90% of online porn. And part of the addictive nature is the quality of it, HD video, sound, beautiful actresses, a world of amateur, home video porn. It's not going to be as addictive.
No.
Yeah. And pornography, it's like, and then now they're coming out with this VR thing. It's kind of like playing a video game. Like, you're doing something, but you're not really accomplishing anything, if that makes sense. You're not getting anywhere with that. And, and
well,
how
also,
could we...
it gets to this, metaphor of even better than the real thing. Like, I've also heard of people who first, they can't get aroused without pornography. So it's like, you can't, and I've heard this from people who have told me this, personally. Like, I had this boyfriend who, he wanted to watch like Bukkake or something before we had a romantic evening. And it's just like, what the fuck is your problem? You have a like flesh and blood woman sitting next to you who's taking her shirt off.
Yeah.
You want to watch his Bukkake? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
His brain is so used to what he sees. He's lost in this fetish in his mind as the reality has dwindled away from him. He wants
so
to
it's even better than the real thing. So with VR porn, if you have high definition goggles on and this super hot, silicone girl who is, quote, sucking your dick, end quote, it's better than the girl down the street who you might have to, you would date. And so you don't, it's hyper reality in the sense that, like, it replaces reality. It's not just like an aphrodisiac or a mild amusement, that you might watch. Oh, I'll check out this, hot chick and watch her, do whatever. It's not that. It's become a replacement for any activity in the real world. And this just strikes me as just so insanely toxic. And the fact that, people, we don't know where it's going to go. This is a new breakthrough. Just let technology develop or whatever. It's just like, shut the fuck up. It's not good. Just ban the fucking thing. I mean, like, I'm just kind of, I don't care. at this point. You know, it is totalitarian. It is using the state to affect the common good. Yes. You know,
It is, yeah, and there's and the thing is, like, I think where so many people, of course, you would piss off like your e-thoughts and your OnlyFans girls and things like that, but there's a cap to the pornography business where there's an amount where the producers are making, because I think they said it was like 10 or 12 billion that the pornography industry revenues a year, but the actual women or the men that are, you know, the actors or actresses that are within the pornography, you know, industry, they're getting paid crumbs. And if you ever look at a porn site, if you scroll down to the bottom, it'll say like USC 15-3 or whatever the case may be. I could see this going to a Supreme Court where the pornography producers are trying to sue or bring a lawsuit forth to the Supreme Court for going against their rights.
Yes.
How do you feel?
Oh, I definitely think they would do that. They would find many supporters. There would certainly be libertarians who would support them, but I would say at this point, most of the left. I mean, I mentioned this in my tweet, and I mentioned this like an hour ago. Elena Kagan is, I mean, again, whatever you want to think about her, liberal Supreme Court justice, she's actually interested in this issue. And she has made arguments on behalf of banning obscenity. So
interesting.
You know, it is interesting, you know, you should, and I could also see like these so-called originalists not go along with it. Although maybe not. Maybe they would just kind of instinctively go with it. But banning porn would be a fundamental shift away from the Holmesian notion of free speech. And you know, it's been 100 years. Let's move on from that.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's get away from the pornography. Let's get back to living in reality more so than ever. You know, and
exactly.
You know.
So. All right, guys. Thanks for your comments. Nifty.
All right. Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's be quick here. Does anyone raise your hand if you're just like dying to speak? Okay. Caravelt 737.
Hey, Richard, how are you?
Doing well.
Great. So real quick, first off, I just want to about the pornography topic. So I absolutely agree with you. And actually, I was just watching a video with, I don't know if you're familiar with Hassan Piker, the streamer, socialist, very interesting individual in a weird way. And he was kind of saying how, you know, the Gavin McGinnis fellows, they took down his stream with Kanye, and he was saying, free speech. But pornography is free speech. This weird thing about pornography being free speech. Like, buddy, you're against guns. Like it's the same argument, but whatever. You could go on and on about that. But hold on.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Hassan was supporting taking down the stream, or he was actually against it?
So he was complaining. He was like crying about like the fact that Gavin, you know, and Ethan Ralph took down the stream.
Oh, okay.
He was restreaming the Kanye West Gavin McInnes interview that was paywalled, so they used copyright strike or something like that to take it down.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So Gavin tried to take it down because he wanted people
to
join
they got
the
him
website.
Banned.
Wow. Okay, I missed this, but interesting.
Oh, yeah, they got him banned for like a day and a half until, you know, Twitch got him back on. But the point is, he was like, he went on his stream. It's just a little hypocritical on his part. Obviously, like, hello, like he was going on about pornography being self-expression and free speech. What the fuck does pornography have to do with free speech? It's like, and this is the same guy who's against guns, against like everything, against your money, against like it's like, buddy, you know what I mean? Whatever. That's in that realm. But what I wanted to say about real quick, not a lot. I just wanted to share a thought about Kanye, about what you said with the earlier man. I know you spoke about it a lot. So here's my thought on Kanye initially. So I understand that he's bringing the conversation and, you know, this whole yayism situation. The guy goes on Alex Jones and, you know, obviously he's bringing a broader conversation that no one wants to talk about. And here's the deal. When a guy says, I like Hitler, I like everyone like Jesus, like, and I love everyone, and bring
Right.
people, most people understand that you're not supposed to love evil people. This whole thing about Jesus loving everybody, yeah, love it. No, evil people should not be loved. And so when people see a guy who, they're known from a young age, hey, this is the evil guy, he murdered, he is, like, everyone knows he's a bad guy. And I love it's like, no, bro, you shouldn't. Why would I want someone who loves pedophiles, love things? I think he's kind of putting a bad name, and he's kind of ruining what could be a great moment. He's like, it's a shame. It's like, come on, man. You know what I mean? A bit.
Yeah. I get it. All right.
Yeah.
Cal, thank you for your comments.
Absolutely.
Do you want to speak? And then I'll go to Aaron next.
Hey, Richard Spencer, how you doing?
Doing well.
So I have this question. I think we're all against porn here. I don't see how you can be so soft on LGBT and the trans phenomenon if you're in general against porn.
I didn't know I was soft on these issues, but
well, I mean, only because you'd been previously, you said libido is inherently bisexual, stuff like that. You said you don't have a problem with trans, whatever expression they should be able to, whatever.
I didn't say the latter thing. You should go back and the space is recorded. You should listen to it. I do think the libido is a kind of, I said, I think even bisexual is almost wrong. That the libido is like a river or something flowing. Like it can manifest in all sorts of different ways and so on. I'm not stating this as like, I value this or this is great. I'm stating this as just a fact. The libido is a kind of undifferentiated force. And I was criticizing people who want to like make a truth claim about the libido or put a name on it or something.
But don't you think that there is a truth in the male-female binary?
What a truth in what way?
Some sort of in the sense that it transcends our merely human existence, in the sense of there's some primal existence of this male-female dichotomy.
Okay, well, yes. I mean, obviously, the male-female pairing is how reproduction takes place. I mean, that is obvious. So it should be elevated in society over mere like romance or something, or certainly homosexuality. Like I definitely agree with that. I mean, what you're saying, you're kind of saying two things. I mean, I heard transcendence in there, where I do think that love can kind of transcend the libido. Like the libido is this like crazy. I guess I'm kind of a Freudian at some level. Like the libido is this like, libido is this like crazy like id. It just wants sex and power and however it can get it. And love can kind of transcend that. You can kind of say, yes, we're all kind of perverted on some level, but we're articulating this through monogamy or marriage or even romantic love and so on. So through poetry, you're sublimating it.
Yeah, exactly. So would you think that that sublimation can and we should be accepting of its sublimation in the form of non-hetero relationships and so on?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tricky thing because I am a fairly tolerant person. Like I'm not really motivated by like going after gays or whatever. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do, I'm not, yeah, you know what I mean? But I do think that like, the heterosexual romance should be elevated. Let me put it, I think that's the best way to put it.
So I think you almost got to the point that I'm about to make, where you said you don't really have a problem with the individual or something to that effect.
Sure.
And I think that's completely fine. I think the problem is actually the sexualization of the trans body. I don't think there's any real sociality going on in the trans phenomenon at the societal level. That's not to say that all trans individuals can't be human. I think that's a fair assumption, but I think that the problem ultimately structures from not even just the sexualization of the trans body, but the brokenness of the family and the sexualization of the body in general have produced the trans phenomenon and pornography. So I think this problem ultimately stems from the family and our lack of attention to the ability for families to produce themselves in a comfortable environment and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think there's something. I think there's a lot to that, in the sense that the family as a unit is being deconstructed and it's breaking down. It's becoming more difficult, and so you have these kind of other expressions that are competing with it. I think that's true, and that's a ideological question. That's a religious question, and that's also kind of an economic question.
So, do you think the
Even
state, therefore, has the responsibility of, in some sense, subsidizing families?
oh yeah, the government does do this. I mean, you get tax breaks for getting married and things like that.
Yeah, but my
Um,
point is the fact that we have so many people becoming transgender and so on. This points to our lack of attention on the family structure.
right. I think the issue is so big. I mean, it's very difficult for people to like. There's an economic question that goes beyond just like subsidies or tax breaks or something. There
Yeah.
we're going in like a downward cycle in economics, and completing the family, like having two cars and whatever in the suburbs, that's becoming increasingly, to no fault of the millennials and Gen Z, I would say. um, and so you have these competing forms of sexuality that are manifesting themselves. I think that's definitely true, and the left that like embraces these things, they're not really Marxists. Like, they're embracing false
Exactly.
consciousness.
Because I can sit here and I'll be honest. I am a legitimate Marxist. These people they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They're basically doing the same thing that sort of white liberal women, to be blunt, will do when they take on when they appropriate um, different pronouns. For example, they say, "Oh, I'm they them," but in all reality, you're just a straight white girl. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
exactly.
And
And
they're
you're
Marxism.
putting on a facade. I mean, look, where did recognition of gay marriage come from? And I think it actually even started as early as the 90s, gay partnership. It came from billion-dollar corporations.
Exactly. All of this stuff that you're seeing is the culmination of a decades-long plan to disrupt the normal patterns of culture which are expressed through our sexuality. It goes back decades, and you're seeing it now culminate into what calls itself the left. And that left is completely in line with the powers which have no interest in supporting the people.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Now, I don't know. I would say this: the general downward trajectory of like the economic future for Americans and Westerners, like, it's so big that I don't think it can be solved with like a tax break or something.
Yeah, I would. I
Like,
would.
it's
I would.
about just general lowered expectations,
Yeah, completely.
where that notion that like I don't have to be a super elite, but like I could have $1 million and have a beach house and a two cars and a big house in the burp. That's just, due to many different factors, that is becoming impossible. And I think we might be kind of like moving out of that stage. That was kind of a 20th century thing, and
Well,
that
sure.
was in
I,
some
I
ways the result of the world wars. Also,
Yes,
like
but I think
making Germany rubble and shutting off the Soviet Union from your economic zone, like that had its benefits, and the bourgeois family was one of them.
um yeah, but I also see the decline as existing within the post-war structures as well, not just the war.
Mm.
So um it's like what who's to say that we don't start investing in some real economy that ensures some real commonwealth? Again,
Right.
I see that problem as it's the exact same reason why the U.S. military, for example, has overstretched itself And
Well,
the question
I
to
have
Germany
some
is
hope.
it's open.
I have a little bit of hope on this end. Something like the Chip Act, as incomplete as it was it actually there was a very strong degree of moving away from China, moving away from globalism, and towards a national economy. And the Russia situation, I mean, those sanctions aren't going away anytime soon. You know, these are there for the long haul. And I, I mean, I'm just going to say it. I think there are going to be some benefits to increased antagonism with China. And they're going to need to be smart people who are going to who are going to crack this nut in some way. Because, you know, like for instance, when people say like, you know, all these iPhones are produced in China, we should bring those back home. The iPhone has never been produced in the United States. You know, something of that caliber has never been manufactured here. Is it possible? Can we do it? Are we going to do it in some kind of different way than Foxconn or whatever? And so I do think there need to be people who can kind of like at the very least address these issues and not think purely in terms of like freedom or something. You know, the businessman has a right to do this or whatever. We should start thinking of like, what do we want to see in our economy, an end goal directed national economic policy.
Yeah, I mean, I
and I
agree
would say
that.
this, I think that's only going to come from the Democrats, because the right is, you know, it's the party of Marjorie Taylor Greene or whatever. I mean, like I just don't think they're able to crack this nut, and
But
liberal
what's the issue with
eggheads
Marjorie
might be
Taylor
able
Greene?
to. What?
No, like what's the issue with Marjorie Taylor Greene?
She's just nuts. And all she thinks about is like owning the libs and attacking people. And so there's no, like, I don't know what she actually wants or thinks. She's never articulated that because she's just endlessly, you know, going after the libs. It just gets tiresome and annoying at some point.
Right.
So how do you reconcile, on the one hand, the need to support America, the national America, and the economy, culture, and so on, and at the same time support heightened tensions with China, and say that the Democrats are going to be able to solve both of those things?
Because I think heightened tensions are good. Conflict is natural. And, you know, one good way to end globalism would be to go to war with China. Just saying.
But I mean, do you think a war is feasible? Do you think that could happen?
Yes.
Who would be the
That
aggressor?
can happen, but the world will know.
Well, I think we could manage it in a way that the world wouldn't end.
But it's like, why can't we direct that competition into
I
form
wish we
mutually
could,
productive?
but
We can. It's the
obviously
Democrats that aren't letting us, though.
the Republicans. I mean, the Republicans have always been in support of globalism. I mean, Trump was a major change, and even he didn't really change anything. I mean, trade deficits exploded during Trump's first 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, but if Trump was progressive for his time in the sense of his deglobalization, view, how could you revert back to the Democrats after that? Shouldn't you be looking for something further?
Oh, of course, I would love something further, but I have to deal with what we have.
But you have such a big audience. Why can't? Why? I mean, I'm
look,
not telling
I
you
would
what
love
to
to
do,
run
right?
for president, but like, you know,
Sure.
even
Okay.
I have a degree of realism
Yeah.
with regard. I mean, look, obviously I want something bigger than this, and I think polarization is for the birds, but like it is what it
Yeah.
is.
I think you're right. I think that this we're living on some type of historical horizon where we can't see what's on the other side, but this two-party system is proving itself unfeasible. I don't think that it's possible for it to weather 10 more years, and I think that the niche for some type of um, no longer conservative or liberal populism, but American national populism. The time is ripe, and I think that ultimately, MAGA communism is the only way to do it. You guys need to join the MAGA
No,
we've
no, no
you
communism, sir.
MAGA communism, and we're not trying
Absolutely
to
no
impose any
communism, sir.
views, but
Respectfully.
is this is this actually Jackson
we're
Hinkle
lending an
speaking?
open hand. That's all. All right, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, man. Okay. I mean, look, it's easy to make fun of kind of Jackson Hinkle types or whatever, but do they, generously speaking, do they kind of have a point? Yes. I also agree with the last caller that I think things are going to move fast. Um, all of these kind of like attempts to go back to normalcy have failed. And I do think things are going to develop fast. And I don't think it's really out of the question for things to start collapsing fast as well.
Well, things are looking like they're going fast, but not in the right direction. To be honest.
Right. I agree, but it's darkest before the dawn. I mean, things can happen really quickly for the good and for the ill.
But
I
that's why the
agree.
culture war is so important, because it stems from the public. It's how the public sees. And if right now, like most of America is, as you know, the topic woke, quote unquote, it's like they are, like, obviously they are genuinely woke. So it's like it's gonna be hard to get any real change when people are just like the population, the country's woke. You know what I mean?
I know, but like I think the culture war has always been an excuse not to actually offer anything, and we're just going to fight about all this stuff. The war on Christmas or whatever. It just becomes like sometimes you just have to offer something. So you have to be the change you want to see in the world, as Obama said. Like just offer what you're offering. Present, affirm the world you want to see, and don't just endlessly harp on the stuff that's crappy. I mean, you say that how many of these conservatives, their version of porn addiction is libs of TikTok, and they'll just endlessly. I mean this very seriously. They'll just endlessly watch this grotesque political pornography all day long, and not that libs of TikTok I mean, I think she probably is misrepresenting people in a lot of ways, but oftentimes she's not. Like there are crazy people out there, but like, do you just want to watch it and watch it and watch it and tweet about it and just express your outrage and say how just abnormal this person is, blah blah blah, or do you want to just kind of go out there and like affirm what you want to see in the world? Okay. Last question. Aaron, you've been waiting for a while. Aaron Cummings.
Let's go. Well, thank you, Richard. I don't know if you covered this earlier, but given your age, I was curious if you had a take, or if you have any memories of the Hustler magazine Jerry Falwell case. I know that's like, I know that kind of went the other way, but I don't know if you're sympathetic to Falwell or anybody.
It's funny. I'm not sympathetic to Falwell in many ways, but I do kind of understand him. I think maybe he was going in the right direction. Yeah, I mean, Hustler magazine. I assume it still exists in some form, but that's almost this like outmoded style of pornography at this point. The actual nudie mag. But yeah, I mean, there is a tradition for banning porn. It's not something completely new. I think that was a little bit before my time, or when I was quite young. I do remember seeing there was a movie starring Courtney Love that came out in the mid '90s.
Yeah. Woody Harrelson.
Yeah, Woody Harrelson played. Yeah, I remember seeing that film. So it was in the air. And who knows? When I was a teenager, I might have taken the side of Hustler, and now that I'm an adult, I take the side of Falwell. Just is what it is.
Nice. Do you see more cases like that moving forward?
I think I don't want to overestimate, the impulse to ban porn. I know there are there's the dissident right on the internet who would probably agree with that sentiment. They might also be the biggest porn consumers, to be honest, but you know what I mean. The fact that it's just out there, you have, like Vance has mentioned it. It's growing, it's possible, and I do find it interesting that you have a sympathetic ear in terms of Elena Kagan. So it's interesting. I think, I don't know. I could see it. I could see it happening because I could see a lot of things happening. I think there is an ongoing huge reaction to the way things have developed. And a lot of that reaction might not be that great or might be stupid and silly, but maybe there's some positive things that are going to come about in that just massive backlash.
Now, this might be a long shot, but do you see a renaissance of people like Falwell as the culture war escalates? I mean, I don't know if I'm saying like.
I think Falwell was a man of his time. I mean, the religious right emerged post segregation, and it was a kind of answer to a battle that they had lost. And I think it will emerge in a different form.
Interesting. Well, thank you. I'd also like to direct
Sure.
it to the Jumbotron, but thank you, Richard. Good times.
Yes. All right, guys. I am going to call it quits. Thank you for listening, and thank you especially for those who asked questions. And check me out on Substack. We have these conversations all the time. And I will talk to you guys later.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Let's
Take
go.
care.
All right.